Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the I'm Sinspired series. The I'm Sinspired series is where I invite guests to tell us about their careers and what inspired them, with the ultimate goal to inspire you to pursue your passions. And today, I have a very special guest with me today, Imran Ashraf. Say hello.
Hi everyone.
Imran Ashraf happens to be my 5th grade teacher, so this is a reunion for us, and I'm very excited to have you on the show today.
It's good to see you again, Alex.
So Mr. Ashraf, tell us what your role is and what you do for a living.
Sure, I'm an elementary school teacher, and over the years I've taught 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. I've been teaching now for a little bit over 20 years, primarily having taught 5th grade during that time period.
Was there a reason why you only taught 5th grade?
I've mostly taught 5th grade because I really enjoy working with that age group. They're still kids at that age, but old enough that they can work independently and we can laugh and make jokes. They're just really a good age to work with. Also, personally speaking, I had a 5th grade teacher who was wonderful and she really inspired me. And so I think in the back of my mind, when I was considering which grade level to work with, that's an age that always had an appeal.
You just mentioned that your own teacher inspired you to become a teacher. Can you tell us more about how he or she inspired you?
I was an English learner. I wasn't born in the United States. I moved here when I was about 8 years old. So when I was in the 5th grade, I was still learning the language and the culture, and she was extremely patient with me and very kind and supportive. I think I really took that to heart, and I think how people make you feel, you tend to carry that with you over time, and I carried that with me.
What were some of the challenges that you had to overcome to become a teacher?
My background, actually, my undergraduate degree is in business. I thought I would be going into a field related to business. And after I finished college, I worked for a financial company for several years. And I was doing interesting work and things were going fine, but I just felt like I wanted a little bit more, that I wanted to do something that was personally meaningful to me. And so I left that job. I went traveling for a summer, kind of cleared my head, got some space. I was overseas, and when I returned back to the United States, I thought that I would try teaching. And I took some exams and became a substitute. And I did substitute teaching for 2 years, kindergarten through 12th grade. Private schools, public schools, all throughout the Bay Area. After doing that for a little while, I realized that I did actually enjoy working with upper elementary school age students quite a bit. I started getting the process going and getting a credential. That was a lot of hard work, but definitely worthwhile because it provided good preparation for my job. So I had to actually enroll and become a student again, get a teaching credential, which took a year of classes. During that time, I was doing student teaching, working with students in the classroom during the day and taking my own classes in the evening. So it was a pretty busy time. But after I completed that program and graduated from the credentialing program, I started looking for jobs. And during the time that I became a teacher a couple of decades ago, it was very challenging because there were lots of applicants for each position, and the times have certainly changed in that regard. But when I applied for a job, there were many applicants, so it was quite competitive. I did end up landing a position at a wonderful school, and I've been there for a long time now.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're telling me that you actually made a major pivot in career paths. You were first in business, finance, but then you pivoted towards teaching. And in that process, you had to understand what that entire process is, get the right credentials. So you had to put in a lot of time and effort to make that career swap.
That's right. It was a couple of years of substitute teaching and then also an additional year in the credentialing program. So from the time I decided to make the career change to the point where I got my own classroom, I would say it was right around 3 years or so.
But you did all this during your 20s, which was very early in your career. And so I'm very happy that you're able to find something that you're passionate in your 20s early on so you can really grow in your career.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was in my late 20s at that point. So it's actually been great to have done something other than teaching earlier on, because I think it does provide a broader perspective. And I'm glad that I worked in the private sector for several years. But becoming a teacher I have no question, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made.
That's awesome. Tell us about the qualifications that one would need to get a similar position as yours as an elementary school teacher.
Sure. For elementary school, you basically need to have an undergraduate degree. It can be in any subject area. And after you've completed that degree program, you enroll in a credential, which is typically 1 year of additional training. And that additional training really focuses on teaching people pedagogy, how to basically teach others, how learning occurs, different models to teach. Different students basically learn best in different ways. Some are visual, some are auditory, some by doing, and so on. And so you learn about how to be a teacher, how to manage a classroom, and that takes an additional year typically. And generally, during that year, you're assigned a student teaching position where you work basically like an apprentice with a master teacher whose classroom you are assigned to, and then that individual will show how to do the job, what's entailed, and you get an opportunity to work with students. These days, it seems like there are different avenues to become a teacher. And sometimes the student teaching piece is not absolutely required. But to anybody considering this field, I would highly recommend that they not skip that portion, because it's, in my opinion, quite important to get that experience working with students and having a master teacher provide you with feedback, as the process is occurring.
Yeah, your apprenticeship sounds very similar to internships in industry. Is that essentially the same thing?
You could think of it like that. Like it's a parallel, sure.
Mm-hmm. So how about for high school or middle school teachers? Are there different qualifications you need for that?
There are some similarities and some differences. The big difference is that typically if you're teaching middle school or high school, rather than getting a multiple subject teaching credential, you get a single subject credential. And so you need to be considered essentially a master in a certain field rather than a generalist. And for that reason, required that you have an undergraduate degree in the subject field that you'll be teaching. So if you're going to be teaching science, you need to have majored in science. Now I'm speaking primarily for California, but I think it works similarly in many other states as well.
Let's talk about the interview process. How would one prepare to interview for a teacher position?
I think it's important just to try to be natural and comfortable and give honest, open answers. Good preparation in your undergraduate degree certainly helps, as well as the credentialing program. The letters of recommendation, in my case, made a big difference, because when I applied for a job at the school where I teach, one of the letters of recommendation came from my master teacher, and many of the people on the interview panel knew her. They were familiar with her because she had been in that school district for a long time, and they knew of her and respected her. So having a letter from her made a big difference. But I think just when I went in, I felt like I was comfortable speaking with the other teachers and answering their questions openly and trying to build a connection, just smiling, being positive, sharing about my experiences and how I ended up, in front of them. And all of that seemed to make a difference, and that's how I got my position.
Do you remember what kinds of questions you were asked?
Gosh, it's been a while. Like I said, I've been teaching for over 20 years now. So typically they ask you what your strengths are, what you consider areas that you need to work on, what your qualifications are, what your background is, how you would handle certain situations that might come up. This is a very specific thing, but they asked me at one point if I would be willing to go to science camp with the students that were in 6th grade, even though I was applying for a 5th grade position.
Right.
So those types of things come up.
They might ask you, are you flexible in taking
Right.
on additional tasks that are outside of your traditional teaching scope?
Right, exactly. And I think it's important to be flexible. As a teacher, our system is very much based on seniority in most cases. I started off as a 4th grade teacher my first year, then my second year as a 6th grade teacher, my third year as a 5th grade teacher. And the reason for that is when you're first starting out, they tend to place you where there's a need for you. Mm-hmm. So if there's a vacancy, that's where you're put in. So being flexible, especially from the onset, is really important.
Got it. I'm also curious, do you also have to restudy a lot of the elementary school topics to prepare for the interviews?
When I got my teaching credential, one of the things that's required, a crucial piece, was taking a proficiency exam. You had to show that you understood the content of teaching math, science, history, at least at the elementary level. So it was, in my case, a lot of different topics. Not nearly as in-depth it would be were I a teacher in high school, for example, because I'm not single subject, but I had to take a proficiency exam. And so, everything from parts of speech to parts of a cell, I had to study up on that. And it took a few months to get through everything, so I was well prepared to take the test. After I completed the credentialing program, I took that proficiency test, and then I was ready to apply for jobs.
Do we still need to take that test today?
It varies. There's a teacher shortage these days in many parts of the country, and requirements over time have changed, and it's also based on location. These days, at least in California, from what I understand, you can often meet the requirements without having to take the proficiency exam. That's kind of a recent development because there is such a teacher shortage that they're trying to open up more pathways into this career.
Great, thank you. Next, let's talk about salary. What is the expected salary range for a teacher?
It's going to vary depending on where you're located and even district by district in a specific location. Typically, salaries will start from the mid to high 5 figures, depending on the district and location where you get the job. Most of the United States, I'd say it's right around 50, 60,000. In California, it would be a bit higher, in the high 5 figures. Mm-hmm. But a big portion of the compensation in this field tends to come kind of at the back end. Again, this will vary by state. There's often a pension, so that is definitely a big part of the compensation, or at least it can be if you're a certain age and have enough years in the retirement system.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I heard about these pensions. If you work long enough, you'll get to have more pension during retirement, and it's good that you get some coverage for your retirement, so you don't have to always worry about how much money to put into, say, a 401k.
That's right. So if you have a few years in the system, your pension is likely to be fairly small. But if you've been teaching for decades, it can be pretty nice and cover a substantial portion of your retirement expenses. And an additional benefit, you mentioned the 401k. Teachers, in addition to pension contributions, we also tend to have a 403b available, and in addition, often a 457b available also. So in a sense, instead of one retirement plan, we have in many cases access to 3.
That's good to know.
So it's a lot of tax deferred space available for teachers that choose to use it if they can, which, you may have all this space, but based on salaries and you have to pay your expenses, sometimes it can be hard to, take full advantage of that, but we do often have quite a bit of space available.
So if you're watching this, keep in mind the long-term play in being a teacher when it comes to compensation and retirement.
And one more thing I'll mention that I consider a form of compensation, and I really do think it is one. After you've been teaching for 2 or 3 years, and in some places it could be a little bit longer, it can vary by district and by state, but you can become what's called permanent or tenured, and that offers a great deal of job stability in the vast majority of cases. I consider a type of compensation as well because the chances of a layoff are greatly reduced, and so you have stable work for a long period of time.
Sounds like in our current economic environment, a teacher may actually be a really good idea to get into.
It definitely can be, and I highly recommend it to people who are so inclined because it's a very rewarding job. There are perks like job stability, access to additional retirement plans. It's very rewarding and fun.
Awesome. What can be better about your job?
Sure. There are a lot of administrative tasks. I think a lot of people, when they think of a teacher, they have maybe seen some movies and they're just imagining that a teacher is in front of a classroom with a bunch of kids in front of them. But there are a lot of administrative tasks required, a lot of paperwork, everything from grading to planning a field trip to making sure you've got the right type of forms filled out for different committees that you're on. And those administrative tasks, personally speaking, are not my favorites. I do sometimes get tired of grading papers. That's not my favorite part of the job. But I actually, even to this day, enjoy planning lessons because I feel like I'm learning as I'm planning to teach my students. And I definitely enjoy being in front of the kids.
Yeah, a lot of the administrative tasks, I don't know if it's possible to maybe use AI in the future to help speed up the process, make your life easier.
Oh yeah, I think things are probably headed that way, and as technology becomes available, you tend to incorporate it, and I'm sure in education it will be no different.
So Imran, I know you really enjoy being a teacher. What is it that you like most about this job? What is it that you find most rewarding?
Sure, there's nothing quite like helping students learn. I feel like I can make a positive difference in kids' lives, and there's no dollar amount you can put on a feeling that you get when you make that difference, when you help a student. And it's also really enjoyable. We end up laughing together, and all these memories are made over the course of the school year. And in elementary school, I have the same kids in my class for the whole school day. So over the course of a school year, we make a lot of memories in there. And when it's time to go off and end the school year, it really is kind of bittersweet. I'm happy that the kids are moving on to the next grade level, but I miss them because we become a family.
You really get to know the students and also contribute to their growth as human beings, especially from being young kids to being adolescents and then adults as they go out and do other things.
Right, and that's one of the reasons I chose to go into teaching at the elementary level, because I feel like having just the same 30 kids or so for the entire day, the impact that I make is on fewer kids, but it's maybe to a greater degree.
Right.
And it's been wonderful. I would highly recommend this career path to people that are interested.
Right. And just now we're able to reconnect as well as student and teacher. We got lunch and now we're on the show today trying to inspire the world about being a teacher.
Yeah, and it was wonderful meeting up for lunch after all this time.
That's right. What advice would you have for someone who also wants to be a teacher?
I would recommend kind of dipping your toes in the water, as they say, and trying out different opportunities to be in a classroom, whether that's volunteering, whether that's substitute teaching, or working at a tutoring center. All of those opportunities can be great to see how somebody likes working with kids. And I think it's important to try different age groups. As I mentioned earlier, when I did substitute teaching, I worked with students from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. Part of the reason was I wanted to see what the right fit was for me. And I think that's important. It's a wonderful career for the right person. You do have to be patient because sometimes it can be challenging in a classroom. You could have behavior issues. You can have, some school years are harder than others. The classroom dynamic is constantly changing from year to year based on who happens to be in the seats in front of you. I think you should start off by being flexible, because one year I was teaching 4th grade, the next it was 6th, then 5th. But if you go in with an open mind and say, this is an opportunity to learn, to grow, it can be wonderful. So I would say that outlook is important.
Imran, is there anything else you would like to say to our audience?
Yes, one thing that I haven't mentioned that often I think people do associate with teachers are the summers off. And I'm not going to lie to you, those are awesome. So in addition to everything else, you get a nice balance, at least during the weeks that you're not working. The summers off are a time to spend with your family and kind of recharge your battery. I've been doing this for many years now, and I look forward to them. I like being in the classroom, but I also look forward to the time off. And as a teacher, you do get a very nice amount of that.
How many weeks are we talking about?
It's going to, again, vary by district, but in my case, it's during the school year. I'd say I have 10 weeks during the summer. So that's a pretty nice chunk right there. And then we have a couple of weeks off for winter break. There's a week for spring break, and the district that I work for, we have a week off during Thanksgiving as well.
Wow, that's a lot of days. Compared to most of us, we only get 3 weeks of vacation per year.
So that is definitely a nice perk. And some teachers do choose to teach summer school and so on. I personally haven't done that because I need some time to recharge that battery and spend with my family.
That's good, yeah. Work-life balance is very important.
Right. Yeah, I highly recommend this career path to anybody who would be interested in it.
Imran, thank you so much for being on the I'm Sinspired series show today. I think even I have been inspired by your story many years later after 5th grade, and I think you really shed light on how rewarding a teacher can be and all the benefits there are as well. And also, I do want to thank you for being my 5th grade teacher, because you definitely taught me a lot back then. The way you taught me, you helped me really enjoy the learning process. And because of that, I'm able to do well in high school and also go off to good college to where I am today.
That means a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. And it's like I said, that's one of the reasons I became a teacher. And so your words really touch my heart. Thank you.
So if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe to Sinspiration to stay up to date with new content, new videos, and also check out my page to learn more about how you can grow your mindset. You've been Sinspired today!
I was your age, and then you're going to be my age, and I'll be 70.
And I will say the same thing to the younger folks, the people I mentor.